Hello and welcome back to the Commit Message podcast hosted by me, Zain Raza from the Computer Science Society over at the University of Windsor. Today's episode is with the most experienced software engineer out of the lot. Usually we just get people early in their careers or even still in school for the most part. But my cousin Ahsan, he's going to talk to us about his experience over at Workday, namely where he is as a senior software engineer over in the Bay Area. How he got there, his story, his experiences, his school, all that stuff will be covered uh, about his journey. But before we get into this, I'd like to thank you all for getting us to 100 subscribers. And, I love carrying CSS's social media department, or at least the content side of it. Maybe some other people will start their own shows or something. But other than that, sorry for the delay. I got lazy. We're in a reading week right now, so I decided, well, let me just post this up. Interesting because I think I recorded this like almost 2 months ago now, so unfortunate for that. But anyways, without further ado, here's the next episode of the Commit Message podcast with Ahsan. Yeah, and we're back. I'm here with Ahsan, senior engineer at Workday. How are you feeling?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. Getting here, it feels great, but I want to continue moving forward, and grow my career further.
So, where would you say you are in your career right now? I wouldn't say you're entry level, and you just recently got to senior again, which we'll get into again later. But where are you in your career?
I'm at a point where it's probably mid to late career in terms of software engineering. I've been in the industry for 10 years now, so it's
not including school, right?
That doesn't include school. No, that's just 10 years in the industry working.
Yeah. Okay. It's gonna be an exciting episode. We rarely get people like this, so right. Let's get right into it. All right. So, tell me what happened in your childhood that like pointed you towards tech. Was it the money? Was it the fame?
No. I think for me, I was always fascinated with working with computers since childhood. When I went to high school, I took all the computer science classes that were available in high school, and it was more than money. It was just like really enjoyable and really fun. It's something I really like doing. And so when I applied to undergrad, I only applied to computer science. I didn't really apply to any other
Okay.
majors. So for me, that's how I got started. It was just something, something I enjoyed, something that was fun for me.
Okay. So let's talk about high school courses that you might have enjoyed. So, were you more? So you definitely took computer science, grade 11 and 12, probably.
Yes.
Okay. And
And at that time, there were also grade 10. I don't know if that's
yeah,
still the
okay, there
case.
is. But
Yeah.
it's not. I guess sure. Yeah, grade 10, 11, and 12. You took computer science. Was there a computer
Yes.
engineering course you took at
No,
your
there
school?
was and there was no one available.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you took math, computer science, all the standard stuff, and you decided, okay, let me apply in 12th grade. What schools are you thinking of for computer science?
At that time, I was only considering University of Windsor. Just the proximity to where I was living. That it was just like in my comfort zone at that time.
So back at that time, was there such a thing as like target schools or things like that?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people in my high school, they wanted to go to Waterloo, McMaster, University
Mm,
of Toronto as well, and a lot of them did end up going there. But for me, it wasn't. I didn't really consider those at the time. For me, it was I was still like, for me, University of Windsor wasn't my comfort zone at that time, so that's where I went.
okay. And you've got into like computer science at University of Windsor. It's not too hard. And what are you thinking? What's your goal going into first year, maybe?
To me, yeah, at that time, it was just for me to learn programming. To grow my knowledge on programming, on
Mm-hmm.
software development. Learn the concepts. Learn new programming languages, core concepts like recursion and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that we're learning linked list, obviously, in the first year, and that was it. There was no, at that time, for me there was no sort of concept of money, or I wasn't thinking that far down the road in terms of career, like where I was going to end up. It was just programming. That's what I was interested in at that time.
Yeah. Were you enjoying the courses, the profs? How are you feeling about the school?
Yeah, I think all the courses, all the computer science courses, for the most part, I would say maybe a few, with a few exceptions, but yeah, for the most part, the courses were enjoyable. I really, again, it was more fun for me than exercise, or yeah. So that for me, it was really enjoyable.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. Did you have any goals of doing an internship, teaching assistant?
Yeah, I did try an internship after second year, and it didn't work out. But I only tried it briefly for one semester, and then it didn't work out. So I didn't try again. But I should also mention, at that time, internships weren't as popular, I would say, as they are today. I mean, I know a few people that did end up doing internships at that time, but generally speaking,
Mm-hmm.
they weren't as sort of as talked about as they are today, or
Okay.
as popular.
Right. Okay. And during your university career, you ended up doing a research assistantship. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, that was in the summer semester after third year, and the entire fourth year. So that was, for me. I wanted to do something beyond just the my 40 courses that I had to take, and f- I was just looking for, something that would be beyond sort of uh, what I would learn in those 40 courses. So I just approached the professor, Professor Rueda. He still works at University of Windsor, about if I can help him with any of his research.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it was more due to passion more than anything that I did that. And then when I did, he was also very receptive of that, and he took me in. We did a lot of work in the summer semester of after third year. And what ended up happening was, after that, when fourth year started, that ended up being my 499 course.
Yep.
That entire work we did, it continued on, and
Yep.
for those next 8 months, and we got more people involved. So the fourth year, the 499 is not just one person. There are multiple people, so we got more people involved in that project. But that's that's how the research assistant ended up happening.
Yeah. Okay. And at what point in university would you say you're confident about your programming skills? How long do you think it took?
I would say second year, really, when you complete courses like 254,
Data structures.
um, data structures algorithm. I also took 280, which I don't know what they teach in that course anymore, but back then it was sort of more slightly more complex Java
Yep.
uh, concepts, such as multi-threading, user interfaces, stuff like that, unit testing. Actually,
Mm-hmm.
no, sorry, unit testing was a different class, but there were, like I said, there were just more complex concepts taught in that class.
And what was your attitude towards these courses while you were taking them? Did you go to lectures, every lecture, go to every lab regardless of whether it's graded or not? What was your general attitude going towards courses?
Yeah, I went to all the lectures. I think for me, going to lectures, I would say you learn more going into lectures. But again, at that time there was no. I mean, professors did post slides online at that time, but there was a lot of information missing at that
Mm-hmm.
time. So I think things have changed in 2022. By
Yep.
that time, things were different.
Yeah. Okay. And graduating university or nearing graduation, did you expect some sort of job or career? And can you tell me what you were applying to, maybe?
Yeah, I really started looking into job in my fourth year. At the beginning of fourth year, that's really when I started thinking about like, where is this going to lead in terms of career. And yeah, so at that time I started applying into all sorts of tech jobs, software development, obviously, but also testing, DevOps roles. DevOps was called something different at that time, and I applied to those roles for pretty much from the beginning of fourth year until pretty much the entire fourth year.
Okay, so can you explain to me what the difference between a developer position and a DevOps position might be?
A developer position, you're primarily working on the product that the company plans to release publicly. In some companies, they use that role also for, or that title, I should say, they use that title for internal tooling as well. But generally speaking, it's for products that the company releases externally to its customers. DevOps. They generally help developers be productive
Okay.
and get their things done. So things like the build system, the build tooling, those are the things primarily that, and speeding up making sure the builds are running within a reasonable amount of time. The entire dev environment, those are the things that are generally controlled by DevOps. So yeah, that's the main difference between the two. DevOps, they would generally they host software or systems like Jenkins and whatever, and there are many other similar systems,
Yep.
Jira and things like that.
Okay.
So yep.
So, yeah, all right. And you're applying to all these positions in Ontario, Canada, North America. What's your scope?
At that time, I was only looking in Ontario. So primarily Waterloo and Toronto were my targets at that time.
Okay, and you were open to moving, which you eventually did, and we'll talk more
Yes.
about later. Uh,
Yes.
yeah. So, was there a notion of remote roles in that time?
No, there was no concept of remote roles at the time. Everyone was coming in 5 days a week.
Hmm.
Yeah. So I should mention this was 2011, right? So this is a time where the software industry was growing like leaps and bounds. It was still a mature industry, but not as mature as I would say as it is today.
Hmm. Okay. And you ended up landing a job at BlackBerry as a DevOps engineer. Can you tell me what it was like there? Or even before getting there, what was the interview like? Without going into specifics, of course. Just how do you apply? What was the interview like? And then how was the job like? Those three things.
Yeah, what I would say the interview there was like is it's nothing like the interviews that are today. It was primarily just get to know about me. I didn't have any co-op experiences, so it was primarily just get to know me. They asked a lot about my 499 project and the basically my research assistant project. They asked a lot about that. They reached out to my prof, Dr. Rueda, again, to get his recommendation, and that's how I ended up getting the job.
Okay, it was just one round of interview.
There were 2 rounds of interview. There was one round with, this is after after talking to the recruiter. There was one round with the hiring manager and one with the DevOps engineer and the hiring manager.
Right. So you've managed to land yourself a DevOps role. Do you have any idea of what you were thinking going into it? Did it match your expectation? Did anything prepare you, especially from the university, to take on that role?
No, it was very different from anything I'd expected. At that time, when I was getting into it, I actually, even though the role said DevOps, it was hard to sort of picture what that looked like, and it ended up being very different than what I imagined. But it was nevertheless, it was a very sort of very rewarding and very interesting role, because the things I've learned from that role, a lot of engineers they wouldn't know those things, because if you've been a software engineer from the beginning, things like the build system, how to set up Gradle, how to set up MAME, and all those things, how to configure all those things. That's something I learned from that role. So I still use those things I've learned to date, and it was not what I had expected in terms of like the work I was doing. There were other things like the version control system Now we were using Perforce and later on Git, and we had to learn those in much more depth than the average software engineer. So again, those skills I still use to date. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And you did this role for quite some time. Did you have any dissatisfaction with the role, or did you think you weren't reaching your full potential with this role?
I wouldn't say I was dissatisfied. I think after doing it for a few years, I knew I still wanted to go into software development and do software engineering.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say I was dissatisfied with the role. It's just not what I wanted in the long term.
Okay, and
Yeah.
did you have a picture for what you wanted in the long term by now?
Yeah. In my mind, I wanted to go into software engineering, and in a few years, I didn't have like a specific timeline, but in a few years, be a senior software engineer at a tech company.
And I guess this is a good place to ask this now since we're on the topic. Okay, so there are many levels of software engineering, and this is like overlooked by a lot of university students. There's the junior developer, the senior developer, the staff developer, the
Yes.
principal developer,
Principal, yes, yes.
and there's even higher above that, right?
There are senior principals. Yeah.
So, what distinguishes everyone at a different level?
Um, for an entry level developer, you're generally working with a um, senior developer. You're getting you're getting guidance from them. They'll generally do the design for you. They will tell you the things to work on. They'll basically be your mentor. And then there's between I should also mention, different companies have different leveling. Like this
Yeah.
is, I think everyone knows this, but like it's important to know, like a senior software engineer at one company could be an intermediate one, and that happens a lot. Not just like in terms of compensation. I'm just talking about like in terms of expectation. A senior at LinkedIn is often they're just an intermediate engineer at many of the companies, for example.
Mm,
So the distinguish how do you distinguish between the different engineers is, again, the expectations, the expectations and the projects you're working on. The higher level you get, the broader your scope gets, right? So once you get to principal staff, you're not just working within your own software organization. You're basically affecting different multiple organizations. So if I'm working in, let's say, analytics, and I'm a principal software engineer in analytics, I might actually also be impacting other organizations. Say, I don't know, database, for example. I'm just making it up, but that's another organization. And in between that, you have senior software engineers. Senior software engineers, they really lead the projects in within the organization
mm-hmm.
they are
Yeah.
in. So they will do the dev work. They'll do bulk of the design, and then they will mentor the intermediate and the entry level software engineers to
Mm-hmm.
you know to to do their work basically.
Yeah. And the levels above that, are there like, it is that I guess what I'm trying to say is like, is there a noticeable distinguishment between like a senior engineer, a staff engineer, a principal engineer, or are those all on the same level?
No, there is definitely a difference between senior staff and principal. Staff and principal are used interchangeably at some companies, although generally when I think of a principal engineer, uh, they are, like I said, they are affecting multiple organizations. They generally don't do a lot of coding. They are more architects. They're doing and they're doing high level architecture, not necessarily feature
Mm-hmm.
architecture. And they are affecting their work affects multiple organizations across the companies.
Right. Okay. And
Yep.
towards the end of this job, we're going back to BlackBerry now. You're thinking like, or not the end of your time at BlackBerry, but as a DevOps engineer, or the first
Yes.
ever BlackBerry job, right? You've transitioned, and how did you make that transition, and why did you make that transition?
Yeah, so that was pretty easy, and it's pretty similar at most companies. You have to ask your manager that you're interested in that in a different role and what that role is. Oftentimes this varies by company slightly, but generally speaking, that's the route you go to your manager. Now, why I did that again, I wanted to go into software engineering
Right.
in the long term, and this was a good segue into, or pathway, I should say, into doing that without going to a new company. When you're going to a new, if I were to try to doing this at a new company, they would just say you don't have any software engineering experience.
Mm-hmm.
So you know we they, it would be hard to do that without any co-op experience, without any software engineering, like actual software engineering experience. DevOps is at that time DevOps wasn't as mature as it is today. So now most tech companies, I should say, consider DevOps as actual software engineering experience, like equivalent. But at that time, companies didn't. For them it was just its own thing that you did on like a different kind of job.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And around this time, we'll cut in right here. You decided to start doing your master's. So, what was that decision like? Why did you decide the school? I'm guessing it was because of location. But also, what did you think you would learn from a master's, and what did you actually end up learning?
Yeah, for me, the reason for doing masters is just to broaden my knowledge that I hadn't gotten yet from work, and I wouldn't ever get. You do get into more sort of in-depth topics that across multiple classes you do get to learn a lot. What I would say is that the knowledge you learn, even though it's interesting in masters, even though knowledge is interesting, you may not ever use it, and that's it's sort of like taking I don't know if you for example 311 from
Intro to
I don't,
software engineering, right?
yeah, like that and not in terms of, because it's different, not like you're learning a different, it's not the same thing that you're learning. You're learning different things, but just in terms of application to your uh, to your to your job, there's very minimal application to your job for the most part.
Okay.
uh, that was my experience with doing masters. Yeah, like you said, the reason why I went to Waterloo is because I was living in Waterloo at the time, so it was the closest university for me. And well, I mean, obviously, it has its name reputation that also made me go there. But yeah, it's primarily the location.
So, would you say Waterloo helped you like gain like qualifications that would enable you to go to higher positions? Like, for example, would you say a senior engineer requires a master's?
No,
Or
senior, no, it doesn't require masters. It doesn't need masters. It probably won't help you get a senior or principal position. Um, what has it helped me in my career? I would say, generally speaking, it hasn't.
oh,
Um,
okay, wow,
but with that being said, there are a lot of jobs where the job requirements um, slash want, like the things they want to see in their candidates. Um, they want masters, or they want someone with masters and lesser experience
oh
than
yeah,
someone
I've
with
seen this.
bachelors. So if for just an example, right? They will say the requirements will say we want someone with bachelors with 8 years experience, or masters with 5 years experience,
Right.
right? Things like that. You would see that. So it in those cases, having a master's would definitely help. Um, like I said, it hasn't helped me in my career, I would say, but it doesn't mean it won't help you or someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're going for more um, research oriented or academic oriented careers. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay, so far what's happened at BlackBerry, you've started a master's, we've gone from your DevOps position, which we kind of skipped over, but you actually got a promotion. You're like a level 2
Yeah.
DevOps developer.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yes. So I got that 3 years into my into working. I got promoted to DevOps developer 2, basically.
okay. So
Yeah.
I'm guessing just compensation benefits, and you just it's just another title. Were you
Yeah.
doing the same stuff?
Well, yeah, same stuff, but you have higher expectations. People depend on you more. That's what generally happens. Right? The expectations grow. More people depend on you. More people see you as sort of a subject matter expert
Right.
on certain topics within the
Yeah.
company.
Okay. And you asked your manager, I'm interested in some role that was open, and this happened to be system software developer two, right? Oh, or whatever it was called in BlackBerry, right? So,
Yeah, I actually didn't give him a specific role. I told him I just want to do software engineering.
okay.
So he found the role for me within the same organization, and that's how I ended up there.
Okay, so you completely transitioned to working with another team in the same office, was it?
It was not only the same office, it was the same organization. So it were when I was doing DevOps, I was doing DevOps for the same product that I
Oh,
was doing. Yeah, it was
nice.
the same. They were so because of that, I had some knowledge on that product that came in useful when I was actually doing software engineering. So it wasn't like I was learning that product from zero.
And this goes to show you don't necessarily have to land your dream job out the gate, right? You
No,
can, yeah, you can
yeah,
transition.
and a lot of people do that. I've seen a ton of my colleagues at BlackBerry and the companies I worked at later. Start as test engineers, DevOps, and then later end up as software engineers. Generally speaking, software engineer software engineering at entry level is very competitive. It's not easy to get into. Even if you have co-op experience, it's very competitive. So a short a way around that is to um, you know go into DevOps, go into software testing, and then transition into software engineering at the company you're working at. Like I said, it's going to be hard to do that at a different. If you try to switch the company, it's going to be much harder.
Right. Okay. And what was it that you were doing as a system software? Without saying too much, of course, but was it really low level stuff or some back
Primary,
end?
yeah, we're primarily building web services for our.
Okay.
So this is we're working on the back end primarily, the building web services. There are also a few other pieces that are team owned that were also at the same level, like like at the web service level, but not exactly web services. But yeah, it was primarily web services that our team was responsible for.
Okay. And you only did that for around a year and a half before you decided to move on. I mean, you don't really have to say it, but on a broad level, why did you decide maybe this isn't it at BlackBerry?
Yeah, BlackBerry at that time was really stagnating as a company, right? So when I joined, we had 20,000 employees, and then when I left, we have 4,000 employees.
Oh,
So right, so I mean, besides the layoffs, obviously, the room for career growth was really stagnating at that time. So that's really what it came down to. But the role that I was doing as a system software developer too is I actually learned a ton from, even though it was a year and a half almost. I actually learned a ton in terms of like web services, databases, even UI. We did a little bit of UI. We didn't do a ton of UI in that role. But yeah, it's probably been like some of the most interesting things I've worked on as a software engineer.
okay. Okay, and you're applying everywhere, like towards your tenure at BlackBerry. What is your scope of application? Ontario, Canada, North America?
It was still Ontario, and no, I wasn't applying everywhere. At that time, I was passively looking for a new
Okay.
role. So I was applying to a few companies every few months, basically.
Okay.
And yeah, that's how I ended up at NetSuite Oracle.
So, by the time you were interviewing there, was it already? If for those who don't know, NetSuite was an individual company that was acquired by Oracle. Was it acquired by the time you were there?
It was a, it was the acquisition was announced 3 weeks after I joined, and it was after I started, and it was completed. I want to say 4 or 5 months
Okay.
after I joined.
So we'll get into that, but what was the application process like for NetSuite? How did you like it?
It, it was pretty straightforward. Like most jobs, you upload your resume,
Yeah.
and you go to their application website, upload the resume, fill out any details, and yeah, that's
Did you
pretty much
have
it.
any other options other than NetSuite that you were looking at the time?
Um, no, I didn't have any other offers at that time.
Okay, so you went with NetSuite for the career prospects, right? Which is the main thing. Also, it was
Cur-
close to
cur-
you, right?
yeah, I mean, it was career growth, right? Like if like a lot of like everyone in our industry, I should say, or most people,
Yeah.
at our age, we're trying to grow our career as fast as we can, and that was it.
Okay. And you joined as a junior dev, I'm guessing, or it just said normal dev, but
Yeah, it was intermediate depth, so one
okay.
level above entry level.
Okay. And of course, without getting into too much detail, you were working on some sort of uh, app, or were you working on
I was
some?
I, I was working on a payroll system
Yeah.
at NetSuite. The payroll system, primarily working on the back end side. There are, I guess, a little bit of front end too, but primarily back end and also the database side.
Yeah. So after about like a year or so, you ended up getting promoted.
Yeah, 8 months. I ended up getting promoted to senior software engineer.
Okay.
At
And a couple questions about that. So you're at this point in the industry from what 2011 to what is this like 2016, 2017? So
This is early 2017. Yeah.
okay, so it's about 5, 6 years. Do you think that's like average for junior to senior jump, or like junior intermediate jump to senior?
I would say that's probably average, maybe slightly above average even. So I think that one of the important things I learned um, through all this is you really have to sort of push your career yourself.
Okay.
You know, that's one of the things I didn't do at early on, to uh, push my career to from like entry level to the next level, and that can significantly speed up your how fast your career grows. It can, you know, and you don't have to leave your company to do that. You can do that within the company as long as you discuss with your manager what your career expectations are, how fast you want to grow, where do you want to go. If you do that with your manager, that's um, I think that's one way to make your career grow faster.
Okay, so for the 1 year where you were a software engineer, how did you float by your manager that you wanted to be senior?
I think for me it was just I was performing at a senior software engineer level. So I
Okay.
talked to my manager that that's what I'm performing. I also brought up the fact that I have a master's degree, and a lot of people obviously don't. I don't know if that played a role in their mind, if that played a role.
Mm-hmm.
But it, yeah, that was primarily it, just bringing up my performance.
Right. Okay. And you knew what a senior software engineer looked like basically because you were already in the industry for a couple of years now.
Yeah, the expectations differ from company to company for a senior software engineer. But yeah, at NetSuite Oracle, I knew what the expectations were.
So, generally speaking, what couple of things that are common things that junior engineers do, or mistakes they make, or stuff that's keeping them from being a senior engineer?
I think it's you have to. be able to take on more responsibility and be comfortable with it, especially responsibility that not only affects you directly, but for things things that affect the entire team and maybe multiple teams in your organization.
Mm-hmm.
Things like going into architecture or feature architecture, actually, not the product architecture. Uh, you have to be able to lead in many different ways for features. So when it comes time um, to working on a feature, senior software engineers, they will sort of give guidelines. Okay, this feature we think we can complete in 6 months. So at the planning stage, I should say, not at the working stage. At the planning stage, that's what they do. And then when it comes time to working on the feature, they lead on the architecture. They lead on the planning and all that stuff. So that's one of the things that will distinguish you from intermediate and entry level software engineers. You also have to go above and beyond just writing software, just writing the main software, I should say. So by that I mean unit testing, integration testing. Building those tests, building those systems um, is really led by senior engineers. So you have to take the lead on that, make sure that your team that you are really you have high coverage unit tests. You're ideally 90% coverage, but that's obviously harder if you're starting at a company that doesn't already have unit tests. But just having that attitude around
Right.
Covering a lot of different things and being
Yeah.
responsible for many different things.
Yeah. Okay. So you ended up being in this period of time. Some point, you became a tech lead, which means you ran the project, right? And
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't the only tech lead, but yeah, I was one of the tech leads. So yeah, the project we're working on, I was basically doing the architecture and the and the development, and make sure that we keep our test coverage targets. We hit those test coverage targets. I also did, because of my experience with DevOps, I also set up the build system
right.
for our project. We weren't using we were using the one that was provided by the DevOps at NetSuite Oracle, but we had more requirements beyond that that we ended up basically satisfying those requirements ourselves by setting up that build system.
Okay. And as a senior engineer, I'm guessing you just had you had a ton of input on what was actually happening. Like in a meeting, for example, your project manager has to float by you as a tech lead slash senior engineer. Can we do this? Instead of just
Yes,
yes.
yes, they definitely, in terms of the timelines, like, can we get this done in the next sprint or the sprint after? Um, or if not, when can we get this done? Basically, the timelines is something that um, the, that you have a lot of input on. Also, how feasible something is, right? Like, is it going to take 2 weeks to do, or is it going to take 3 months to do, right? They're going to ask you sort of the timeline of getting a user story or an epic completed.
Okay. How are you feeling at this point in your journey about your career before going on to
I
what happens next?
Yeah, so this time I was working on very interesting things, and we were just about to start a new project, which was to, in many ways, rewrite the backend, although not entirely. It gets complicated because of the architecture of the product we're working on, but it was, like I said, we're starting a new project, and that was getting very interesting, where I had a lot of input on the project, like where that was headed, what things we would work on the architecture of that project. So yeah, for me, those were very interesting times.
Okay, and while you're a senior engineer now, you get to basically, I guess, order around juniors or interns. Did you have any interns or juniors?
We at that time in our team, we did not. We only had on that project we were working on. It was just me and two other software engineers. We're all senior software engineers.
Oh, okay, okay,
Yeah.
and uh, nothing out of the ordinary at this company. Nothing that immediately uh, you have to note before we move on to what happens after.
Um, no, nothing out of the ordinary. But I guess one thing worth mentioning is the code base here that we're talking about is generally legacy code base, meaning it's quite old. It's not
Right.
it hasn't been up to date with the latest tooling, latest frameworks. The unit tests are missing. So it was basically 15-year-old Java code they're working with.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, such is expected when you're working at something like Oracle, right? So,
Yes.
all right. So, you ended up leaving not too long after this was probably your longest job run, as in like this job was the longest you've ever held, the senior engineer at NetSuite. So, towards the end, why did you think of leaving? Why were you thinking of applying somewhere else?
Um, Again, I think it came down to learning new things and also career growth.
Mm-hmm.
That was primarily it.
Okay, it's important to note here, and of course, this has probably made it into the title. You decided that you wanted to, during this position, which I forgot to mention, is you wanted to work in the Bay Area.
Yes.
What was that decision? What made up that decision?
It was. I wouldn't say it was related to actually to work. It was primarily just I wanted to try um, like try living in a different environment, try working in a different environment. Um, it wasn't really like strictly like related to my actual day-to-day work.
Okay,
Yeah.
and was it? Did your career being boosted by the Bay Area have any effect? Because of course, like Kitchener, Waterloo might have like 20,000 jobs. The Bay Area probably has 10 times, if not more, right?
I mean, I think everyone who's in the software engineering industry knows that you earn a lot more money in the
Right.
Bay Area than you do in or across most of the U.S. Forget the Bay Area, than you do in Toronto and Kitchener Waterloo. Um, so that did definitely sort of that was definitely I guess that's something that happened when I moved there. But in terms of long-term career like growth, like outlook, I I think it's hard to say if my career growth was boosted by moving to Bay Area because in Toronto, in Kitchener Waterloo, in Vancouver, there are these days there are just so many tech companies. There are so many opportunities and people that are growing their career so fast that it's hard for me to say if I was still in Kitchener Waterloo that I would be further behind there was right now. Notwithstanding, I'll probably not be earning as much, but that's a different discussion. But just in terms of like career growth, I think it's hard to say for me.
Right. Okay. So, like, give me some things you learned when you moved. So, for example, like, you moved completely. Like, no family. I don't think that was relevant near the Bay Area. Was there anything important you learned by living out on your own, like way far away from anyone you know? Or you probably had friends.
Yeah, no, I had friends, but I think for me it was not that different than moving to Waterloo because again in Waterloo it was not. My family was still a few hours away, so it's not like I could see them every day or even every week. It was not practical. So it was in a lot of ways it was not a new experience for me to move to a Bay Area. It was a new experience in terms of moving to a new country though, because a lot of
Yep.
things, a lot of government systems, those are different. So obviously, a lot of it you're starting from scratch with um, with the government sort of. For example, getting a driver license, right? That's an example. You have to get those things from scratch. But
Hmm.
in terms of family, no, it was not. It was not that different than moving to Waterloo.
Okay. Is this a career move you'd recommend to people who are thinking about what's best for their career?
Um, I think if your primary concern is maximizing your compensation, then that's something you should seriously consider.
I think it's worth
Uh,
noting that while the compensation is also very high, it's like one of the most expensive places to live in the world.
yes, it is incredibly expensive. Although I should also mention Toronto is also fairly expensive in terms of
Yeah.
housing. Waterloo is Kitchener Waterloo are they actually have gone fairly expensive recently as well. They're not that much cheaper
Yep.
than Toronto. Um, but yeah, like how as a single person, good luck affording a house in the Bay Area. A house, even a condo, you'll have a difficulty getting a condo. Until you make one of those crazy salaries you see on Blind, for example. Uh, the- but otherwise, it's going to be it's going to be tough buying a house.
Okay. And and shortly after moving out, you decided NetSuite Oracle is not what you were looking for, so you ended up searching. And I think I remember you telling me this one took a while to switch out.
Um, yeah. So after I moved to the Bay Area, I was still at NetSuite for more than almost 2.5 years. But yeah, I started applying just before the pandemic actually began, and yeah, throughout the pandemic, or not throughout, actually, I started at Workday, my current role in September of 2020. So about 6 months, I applied, and that's how I ended up at Workday.
Yeah, 6 months. That must have been a lot of interviewing, a lot of
Yes, yes.
So, uh, can you tell me what the okay? I mean, you don't have to give the questions, but now we're in the modern age when you interviewed, right? So,
Yes.
what's it like interviewing for? You're interviewing for like intermediate positions. It's not necessarily senior positions, right? So,
I was actually interviewing for senior positions at the time primarily.
oh, okay, but you ended up
Yeah.
ending, like accepting an intermediate position. So, what are the
Yes.
interviews like? Because I know a lot of people they talk about like the algorithms, the data structures. I'm told that senior level positions, while they also have those, there's an additional layer of knowledge that you need to have. So, what are senior
Yes.
level interviews like?
Yeah. So senior level interviews are, like you said, there's still a lot of leak code stuff. So system design is the main difference. System design is there's really no sort of, I mean, there are some books, but there's no well-known um, place you can go to learn system design. You kind of have to um, ask. If you ask on like Blind, you might get 10 different answers. Where to learn system designs. Um, but that's the main difference is 40% of the interview is probably leak code, 40% system design, and maybe 20% is behavioral.
How many rounds do you think did it take for the workday position?
You mean how many places I interviewed at, or how many
Or how many rounds of
rounds
interview?
at Workday?
Yeah, at workday.
I think I did six, if I remember correctly.
Jesus, six
Yeah.
is. Would you say that's average for a senior engineer interview or position?
Yeah, that's so okay. So correct me if I'm wrong. By a round of interview, you mean interviewing with one person?
Uh, it could be like two levels of interview could be with the same person, but if they're separate interview, like you passed one interview, so you go on to the next one, right?
Oh, okay. By that definition, I did 2 rounds of interview. The first
Okay.
round, the first round was just one interview, and the second round was 5 interviews.
Okay.
Yeah.
It sounds like a lot.
Yes.
So that means like since you got this one offer, right? You must have been interview. You must have had like a ton of interviews, which like just for one company and just to get rejected and then move on to the next one. Is that what the experience was like?
Uh, No, I would say it's not a good idea to just interview at one company and then get rejected and move on.
Okay.
One of the main, and this didn't end up happening with me obviously, but one of the things you want to do to maximize your compensation is to have a competing offer,
Yep.
right? And to do that, you obviously have to interview at multiple companies at the same time. But even if you don't end up getting multiple offers, it's always good to have because the chances of you ending up at the just that one company you're interviewing at are slim. Just going by averages, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
interview processes there's a lot of luck factor involved, and in our industry, unfortunately, there's a lot of great articles on this, but unfortunately, there is sort of no um, there is no I guess scientific, for the lack of a better term, there is no scientific way of evaluating a candidate. So companies have made interviews so hard, so difficult that um, the chances of you ending up at one company is slim to none. So therefore, to maximize your chances, you have to apply. You have to interview at the same at different companies, as many companies as you can sort of wrap your mind around at the same time.
Okay. And just for a ballpark, how many places do you think you were interviewing at one point at your peak?
Probably I would say six maybe.
Whew.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds insane. Okay. And you ended up choosing Workday. Okay, so now here's an interesting angle, I guess. It's important to note that around this time, you ended up like having a family, right? Does this affect like anything in your career? Like you want more stability, I'm guessing. But
Uh, I think for me at that time when I was joining Workday, no, that wasn't a sort of something I considered, like the
okay,
fact that I was gonna have a family. Um, but yeah, like I think once I joined or once I had my child, it is true that having working at Workday made it much easier because um, people were generally a lot were accommodating, in terms of work-life balance, in terms of making things easy for you in general.
yep,
So that became a concern later on.
okay. So
Yep.
we'll go rewind back to accepting the offer. Uh, all right, so you're in an intermediate position again. Did you feel a bit bad about going from a senior role to an intermediate role, or was there like a compensation difference that it didn't matter?
No, I didn't feel bad at all. One thing I think it's always worth mentioning is if you look at levels with FYI,
Yep.
companies, the levels, equivalent levels across companies they don't have the same title. So senior at NetSuite Oracle was equivalent to where I ended up at Workday. So it
Yep.
was, if you look at it in that sense, it's not really a down level. In terms of a title, it is a down level. Um, so that's the way I was looking at it. Yes, my compensation went up again quite significantly because of the move.
Right.
But yeah, it was. I never felt bad about the fact that I ended up getting down leveled. Well, technically down leveled, depending on your perspective.
Okay, and we're back where we started, gunning for that senior position. Uh,
Yes.
but before that, what were you looking at? Since you've already made this move from intermediate to senior, what were we looking at this time? So that this time when you did it, like it was like very fast. It was like a year.
Yeah. I think it's important that when you're taking the job offer, that because I was technically coming from a senior, they knew that they were in some ways they were down leveling me. So you can definitely discuss that with the hiring manager. Like, what is the timeline? Like, if I perform to the level of a senior at my new company, how long is it going to take for me to become senior? And and so the interesting thing is a lot of company will give you a nice answer, like, you can get to a senior in 6 months or a year, but they don't end up following up on that. They don't actually end up doing that. There's a ton of stories like that online. Um, but the main thing is, once you join, you have to keep following up with your manager that, hey, am I on track to become a senior? Right? Is the work I'm doing, is it is it meeting the expectation or exceeding the expectation for a senior software engineer? And so that's the key that was the key for me to become a senior software engineer again fairly quickly.
Okay. So, what is there a knowledge gap that you think there was, like, as in, like, you need to know about this much about the code base before, or like the project you're working on, before you can be a senior?
There was yes and no. There was an expectation that that you own a certain piece of the product. Right, so that piece doesn't have to be a huge piece, right? It can be a fairly small feature. It could be like, a feature that only does a few things, but you own that feature. Meaning, if something if you want to make changes to that feature, if you want to enhance that feature, or if there are any bugs in that feature, um, you're the subject matter expert. So, like, they're gonna come to you to get
Right.
your opinion on those features. So that was one of the things for me that I ended up doing to get senior.
Okay. And a year after, sure enough, you became a senior engineer, and that's where we are right now. You're about to celebrate your 2 year at Workday. Do they do
Yes.
anything special for that?
No, they don't.
Okay. Well, is there maybe like a career track you want to follow at Workday? Is there anything further you're gunning for right now?
Yeah, I think in the long term, I've already talked to my manager about this, but in the long term, I do want to, end up being a principal engineer. Again, no timeline set on this. I can't say it's going to take 2 years, 5 years, 10 years. Who knows?
All right.
But because I just became a senior, it's I have to sort of slowly um, get into the basically the practice of doing what of basically getting involved in architecture decisions, of affecting things that affect the entire or multiple organizations, not just our organizations. So those are the things that among other things that are important as a principal engineer before you get to that level.
Okay. And is there any big plans to, like, for example, like, you want to move again from the Bay Area or something else?
Ye-
Because I know you do have a house there.
Yeah, I think for me it's more difficult now because of
Yeah.
family reasons to move. I I I would be interested in moving, but I think at this point, there's yeah, just family reasons are make it very difficult for me to move at the moment.
Okay. So, we've come to the point where we're up to date on what you've been doing. So, I'm gonna be giving you some perception, some concepts now at this point, and I want to hear your thoughts on these concepts or questions or advice. All right. So the first one I have is remote work. What do you think about this? Because this came into play while you were still doing it, right? So you've
Yes.
lived in a pre-remote era mostly.
Yeah, the interesting thing is I was doing remote work when uh, I was probably doing it for about a year before the pandemic.
Hmm.
So it was largely hybrid. It was one day in the office and 5 or 4 days uh, remote. Um, I think it's, to be honest, it's been that's one of the things that has helped me, you know, take care of my child, or at least made it easier to sort of, you know, have my child, and uh, yeah, and then, beyond that, it's I think you're saving a lot of time in commuting. You're saving you know, I don't think you're proud. Like for me, um, most of my team, I don't think they're any less productive than they were while they were working from the office. So I don't think the productivity has gone down. If anything, people seem to be more productive. That's what I've noticed. So I love doing remote work, and I think that's where a lot of companies are going. A lot of companies are also pushing back on that.
Yeah.
Google started going hybrid. Like now, you have to be in the office 3 days a week. For if you work at Google, again, I think that's making that so black and white. I think is not, yeah, that's not. You're not going to be attracting talent as much
Okay.
if you make it so black and white.
Okay. What is the conception around basically like? Do you think it's behind like some reason behind like we want to see you working, or is it like maybe even like a commercial real
They
estate thing?
No, I don't think it's either of those. I think companies, it's the old school mentality that when you're talking with someone in person, it sparks more ideas in mind, that you wouldn't otherwise have at home. You come up with new ideas, or either that you wouldn't come up at home, or you come up with them faster. And you would be more collaborative. You spend more time with your team, you get to know them better, things like that. I mean, there is some truth that truth in that spending more time with your team, there is, you do become sort of more empathetic to them, like in terms of the way they work, the way they um, do their thing. But yeah, generally speaking, I think it's primarily sparking ideas. I think that's what companies saying will happen if you come to the office.
Okay, and what about this one about the best way to like move up or get on or like get a promotion or a raise is to like have a good relation. It's not what you know, it's who you know, kind of like you have to have a good relationship with like your whoever you're trying to please, your PM, your supervisor, your whoever it is. What do you think about that?
I think, I mean, that's definitely true. If you don't have a good relationship with your manager, it's going to be hard. But it depends on what you define as good relationship, right? If you're someone that performs really well, you're average to above average performer. Um, that's like you should be having good relationship with your manager. At that point, obviously your attitude at work also matter, right? Like if you get along with your peers, if you're contributing uh, to the meetings that you have, and you're getting your work done.
But yeah, anyways, moving on to the next one. So let's say internships help with getting an entry level job, and the second one, which I'll attach to this, is entry level jobs are very hard to get, despite like the news saying like tech's growing. There's a lot of positions. We'll tie those two on together.
Both of those are generally true. Even with entry level jobs, or with internships, I should say, entry level jobs are very competitive. You're not just it's not just graduates from Canada or US that you're competing with. There are a lot of people coming from. There's a lot of developers coming from other parts of the world that are applying for those entry level jobs. So it gets very competitive, and that's why they're like difficult to get. But once you're you have been in the industry for a couple of years, then you'll see a noticeable difference in how easy it is to get a job. Or
So you're saying this whole news about like tech growing, many more jobs popping, like this usually benefits the top most more than the bottom. Is that accurate?
I mean, it will definitely help the top most people increase their compensation. But you still have a lot of jobs opening, new jobs that weren't there before, new jobs being created. So it's still you're still gonna have new grads being able to find new jobs. The unfortunate thing about one of the unfortunate things about industry is that companies are generally looking for senior engineers or intermediate engineers. There's very few entry level they want, and for them, they're a company, so they don't. I mean, they're not really concerned with with the careers of anyone, right? They just want to help get their projects done. So for them, the easiest way to do that is having a senior or intermediate developer get on board, because that's their sort of their fastest way of getting their projects done. But yeah, that's how that also gives you leverage in moving your career grow faster once you are in the industry. But yeah.
Okay. What about this one? The nicest or cleanest way to finish a project, and the best way, I guess, is to have a healthy relationship between PM and tech lead.
Um, you mean finish the project? What do you mean
Yeah,
finish the project?
like best way to have like a successful project, I guess. Like just complete
Uh,
it.
the best there's no best way to have like a successful project. I think there's a lot of things have to go right, and it's not just PM or the tech lead, right? It's projects generally like user stories. They're coming from product managers, from customer relationship managers. People, obviously, those are the people who interact with the customers, and so the way they filter down to the dev team is from there they come to the manager, the management of the organization. So that would be like director, senior director, VP, and all those. And so they have to get through a lot of filters before they get to the dev team. And then even then, like you have, once you start working on it, it's not just PM and the tech lead and the dev. It's like you also have QA involved, which a lot of time, almost as much time is spent doing the testing as is spent doing the actual dev work. So there's a ton of things that have to go right for a project to be successful, and I don't know if there's a recipe for to go right,
Right.
but there are things there are things you can do to increase the odds.
Okay. So that's about as much as I wanted to ask you in terms of what you think about popular things, I guess. Uh, right. So here's an advice section for especially people who are newer or just graduating high school, just graduating university. So I'll go in like the lowest form and then go up. So if I'm going into a university for computer science, I know almost nothing about code. I know like some high school stuff. What would you say if you had to do it all over again? What would you do, knowing what you do now?
I think early in your career, one of the things I realized, it's really important to be passionate
Right.
about writing code, about building software.
Even in
If
university.
you're Yeah, even in university, I mean, when you're starting university, you can take computer science courses in high school. To take all the computer science courses in high school to make sure that where do you sit in terms of like your passion and your interest in programming. That's going to be an important gauge, because if you like those courses in high school, then that's a good indicator that you will like them in university as well. And it is like, once you start working on career, if you're not passionate about computer science, and about like just programming in general, your life is going to be different. Like, you're not going to enjoying your life, right? You will see it as a chore, instead of like something you enjoy doing day to day. So I think for me, being passionate about programming is very important. Probably one of the most important things, I think.
Okay. And just in general, if you were starting a new degree, is there anything specific you would learn? Anyone you would reach out to? Uh,
Um,
how would you make it better? Your experience, if you're just starting all over again from university.
I think I would. One of the things I kind of wish we had at the University of Windsor when I was doing undergrad is, I think the core courses are good. The core, the first and second year we have, those are the core courses.
Right.
140, 141, 254,
Yeah.
212. All those are, I think those are good. But um, I think if we had more specialized courses, things like, learning about, for example, web services, or
Yeah.
learning about um, scaling. How do you design scalable software,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe building some scalable software.
Right.
That I think would have been nice, and I think that's one thing I wish I could do or learn differently than what I already did.
Right. I mean, in the modern era, it's much more important to have internships than it was. I'm guessing way back when. So I'm
Yes.
guessing you'd probably go for that stuff that
Yeah.
would. Yeah.
Yeah. I would go for that much more aggressively than I did, um, back in the day. Again, there was no sort of guarantee that I would get a job back in the day, but I felt relatively confident that, when time came,
Yep.
I could get one.
Okay. That's a time difference, especially in this kind of industry where it moves really fast, right? So
Yes.
yeah. And let's just say you graduate. I just graduated right now. Assume, right?
Yes.
What would you say, like, is the an important, like, career tip? Should I be like job hopping every 2 years to maximize compensation? What should I be chasing?
Yeah, I think even before you start your first job, I think it's important to build relationships, um, while you're in university, and by that I mean, you know, build relationship with your professors, build relationships. If you do internships, build relationships with the people you work with, because that's really going to help you, um, once you start working, or even getting your first job. That's going to make a big difference in getting your first job. Once you get your first job, I think it's one of the most important things is, like, how does that company uh, promote people, right? Like, what are the expectations, and if those expectations for you are not being met, then the only way to get around that is to job hop. I don't think there's um like a set a suggestion on, like, how often should you hop your change your jobs. But uh, these days, if you don't get if you basically if you don't get what you want, I think that's the time to look
Right.
for that's sort of a signal that you should consider something new.
Right. And what do you think? Should people, like, in general get a master's? Is that something that you'd say would help you if you wanted to go a certain way?
Um, I think it's I think I would advise that, if you're the only reason to get a master's, if you're actually like really passionate about what you will learn. If you're primarily concerned with, like, growing your career, I don't know if a master is going to help you. For me, and that was true back then. It's still true today. It's still true today. The reason why I did that was because I wanted to learn um, things that I wouldn't otherwise. That it's unlikely I would learn while working, or things that I just didn't learn while I was in undergrad. So for me, it was more of a passion thing than improving my career prospects.
Right, and there's a through line here, right? So everything you're talking about, it requires passion. Doing university for computer science, passion. Uh,
Yes.
Growing your career, passionate about your career, right?
Yes.
Doing masters, this is
Yes.
all a passion question, right? So
Yeah.
everything you do, especially outside of high school, it's it's really like on you, I guess, is what I could say.
Yeah. I think again, this goes back to what I was saying earlier. Is if you don't have the passion for programming, you're gonna have a tough time not only growing your career but like just enjoying your day-to-day work. So to make it feel like you're not actually working but you're actually just doing something you enjoy, you have to be passionate about programming. And
Right.
that's what I generally suggest is, don't get into programming, don't get into software engineering if you don't enjoy it.
Okay. Important thing. Is there anything I missed before we go on to what you have to shout out? Do you think anything worth mentioning?
um I think just in terms of things to look out for, during things to, I guess, prepare for interviews. Um, if you go on LeetCode and start,
Right.
LeetCoding random questions, that's actually not the best way of LeetCoding.
Right.
The more optimized way is if you go to LeetCode, and once you're logged in, I think there's a page called, or there's a menu called Discover,
Okay.
and it has a lot of different topics in LeetCode. And by topics, I mean things like, depth first search, breadth first search, linked list, things like that. Those are arrays, things like that are very typical questions that you get asked during interviews. And what that helps you do is it helps you recognize the pattern in when you're asked a question during interview, you know that helps you recognize a pattern. Like, okay, so this question I'm being asked,
Mm-hmm.
is it a depth
Yeah.
first search question? Is it a breadth first search? Is it a linked list question? So on and so forth, right? Is it a recursion question, for example? It helps you recognize that pattern, so that um, you're not just you're not just memorizing LeetCode, but you're actually learning, how to apply those concepts during LeetCode. Um, yeah, so I think that's a very important thing I learned while interviewing. Don't just memorize LeetCode. It's I mean, you'll memorize it, but then once you start your job,
Mm-hmm.
you'll forget it, and then when you start looking for a new job again, you have to memorize again. These concepts you learn that I'm talking about, they will stay with you. Like you're gonna forget like the detail, but like the high level concept, they're gonna stay with you to that. If you ever need to look for a new job again, they're gonna stay with you.
Right. Before we go, anyone, any person, anything to shout out?
I think the Dr. Rueda, who I work with after third year in that research assistant project, I don't know if I would have got my job without my first job without his you know without his recommendation, without his support. I learned a lot, but in his with the work I did with him. But beyond that, like my manager, well, at that time when he was doing the recommend, that was my 2B manager. They reached out to him, and like I think he did a great job in like explaining my strengths, and like
Yeah.
so I think without him, I don't know, I may have not got my first job at that time. Also, there's I don't want to name names, but I've had a lot of great colleagues at at BlackBerry, at NetSuite, and even and now at Workday that have helped my career grow. That have helped me, you know, find find things that I enjoy doing that I didn't know I enjoyed doing. So I think I can't name names, but I think there's definitely colleagues that are
They know who they
really
are.
close to they're really close to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Anything huge in the plans in the works?
No, I think in terms of just going back to the question you had on advice just a minute ago,
Yeah.
I think beyond like learning how to lead code, because that's a skill in itself. There are other topics I think that are interesting that I think people. I don't think they'll expect entry level developers to learn, but I think those are sort of repeating topics that come up during uh, intermediate or senior software interviews. So I think I'll just throw it out there. If you ever get a chance to learn those topics, you know, that will really help you get your job. And that is building scalable systems,
Yeah.
right? So that's one, like learning how do you build scalable systems. That is one of the most important things that you will get asked during your interview. Um, Unit testing. Now that's not really something you'll have to worry about during your interview, but once you start uh, working, um,
Yeah. I
a
got hit
bit,
with this too.
yes, how to write unit tests and how to write good unit tests,
Right.
uh, not just writing unit tests, because there's a lot of ways you can spin unit tests, but how to write good unit tests is a skill, and so that is something you can definitely learn um, um, during undergrad, or maybe in your soon after you graduate. Um, I think those are the two important skills beyond lead coding that I wanted to talk about.
Right. And thanks for coming on. You're always welcome to come back if you have anything important to say. Uh, well,
Awesome.
anyways, that was
That
TCM
was
episode 6, right? So we'll see you guys in 2 weeks from now with another episode.